Hello everybody, I hope you're well. Welcome back. This tutorial I'll be painting a misty woodland scene with a stream inspired by the fantastic Ranson. I haven't wet the paper first, but what I'm using is a very dilute mixture of raw sienna just to wash it over the paper. There's plenty of water in that. I'm using that to wet the paper. And I'll just strengthen the raw sienna up in a few places just to try and make sure I keep a bit of a glow in the sky, because I want a sort of a glow in the distance and misty trees on either side. Now this is a mixture, quite a weak mixture for the background trees, of raw sienna and ultramarine blue. And just mix enough of it because you need quite a lot. And I'm just sweeping it up with the hake brush in kind of the rough shapes of and angles of the overhanging trees that I want to have on either side of the stream. Just a few faint marks in the background because the paper's still wet, so this pale paint is diffusing nicely and getting even paler. Right, I'm going to strengthen up the mix a bit with more ultramarine, raw sienna and some Payne's grey this time, and try and get in some stronger trees, and then just put in with the edge of the hake some banks, just trying to suggest the banks. I forgot to say that I had roughly drawn in just where I wanted the banks. You might have noticed that at the beginning, but it's quite faint, the pencil lines, but I forgot to mention it. So I'm following those more or less, although I do go a bit wrong, but it doesn't matter too much because I managed to sort of correct it as I go and keep the banks looking like banks. I'm now pulling down for reflections. Because we wet the paper all over with the pale raw sienna, we can pull down the reflections straight away while the paper's wet. Even before we finish the trees on the top, I kind of know what I want my trees to look like, so I'm going to make use of the wet in wet technique here for a nice soft reflected stream. Just going to squeeze out all the water out of a clean brush, so it's only very damp, to just pull out a sort of water line between the reflection and the bank. And also I want to get in some lift out sort of some ripple lines or reflection lines horizontally across the stream, which is quite effective. It's an effect that Ranson used quite often, which is why his water is so beautiful. I'm just going to have to straighten up these banks a little bit. By the way, don't worry if you think it looks quite ugly at the moment. This is a painting which actually looks a bit odd until you bring it together at the end. So what we're trying to do is get all the light layers in place and then build up on top of the layers of distant trees, build up the banks, the reflections, and then tweak the banks, add some closer trees, closer paint. Oh, the cat is meowing, just hold on a moment. Right, I'm back now. That was the cat anyway. Hopefully I won't get interrupted again. As I was saying, I think you need to just trust that the wet paper will help all this to diffuse. I'm going to now go in with the hake brush. It's clean and damp again, and I'm just going to sort of wriggle it around a bit, scrub out slightly, not too hard, just gently and delicately around the edges. Just to increase the softness of those trees, because I'm thinking that they might be drying a little bit hard. At the moment, as I say, it all looks a bit ugly, but I think we're going to start to pull it together soon. It's all still damp. Excuse me. I'm just going to just straighten up the banks a bit, just until I get them looking more like banks. It's hard for me to describe exactly what I'm doing when I do something like that. And I think it's something that you get a feel for. The more you practice this, the more you actually get a feel for putting in marks that suggest what you want them to. Now I'm using the rigger and the dark mixture of Payne's Grey, ultramarine, etc. to just pull up lots of little branches. These will mostly fade back and blur out, but it will show the distant, the woodland, the misty woodland. You'll be able to see some distant trees as it fades back, and this is where the painting actually begins to look a lot better. Once the branches go in, it makes sense of all those weird marks at the back, which now actually looks like a misty woodland, whereas they looked a bit untidy before. So I'm keeping on using the rigger and keeping on going. In some places I'm actually using the rigger brush without much paint on, just to sort of draw through the damp paint. So there's some variety. And now using a card, I'm just going to scrape up in the Ron Ranson way some trunks and branches and things. Try to keep them quite sort of haphazard so they don't look too regimented, but don't overdo it, although it's easy to overdo it because it's so much fun to do that. And now it's nearly dry. I'm going to put some stronger trees in, and with thicker paint with the rigger, and this time they should stay. This is a mixture of Payne's Grey with a little bit of ultramarine in it, but mostly Payne's Grey, because I want these to be like the final touch to the painting. So we spent most of our time getting in the background layers, really, so that it looks as if the forest goes off into the misty distance quite a lot. This sort of thing, it might not work for you first time, but practice this. Try it again and again. Don't give up and keep going with it. I've had quite a few failures at trying to do this kind of scene. I mean, I think Ron Ranson was actually the master of making things look really easy, when in actual fact it's harder than you think. But what it does need is practice and an understanding of the techniques that you're using, and that understanding only comes really from doing. I can show you this, and you can read the Ron Ranson books or watch the DVDs. What you need to do is make your own mistakes in a way. Really go for it and try things out, and don't mind if it goes wrong. Don't always be looking to produce a finished painting, but to try and understand a technique. And it's just as important to understand why something hasn't worked, and then you can correct it, as it is to understand why something has worked. Anyway, we're nearly at the end of this painting. Please don't forget to ask any questions if you have any, either on the Facebook page or in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you'll have a go at this. You could use all sorts of different colours. I'll list the colours below that I used. It was a very limited Ron Ranson palette. Anyway, thanks for watching, and good luck with having a go at painting it. As I say, it can be tricky, and don't worry if it looks quite ugly to start with. Just try and keep your distance quite pale, build up pale, and then wait to use the dark for the banks and the trees. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. I'll see you soon then. Bye.